Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome General James E. Cartwright.
I really do welcome the opportunity to come up and talk to you today. And I'm still trying to figure out legend and leader. And my grandson last night, as I tried to explain to him what it was I was going to do today, just looked at me and said, "But can we go play?" Probably had it about right. And I don't know about you, but I switched over to grandson about 10 minutes into the debate. It was a lot easier to understand. This is somewhat of a daunting task, and I tried to come at this conversation that we're going to have today. As Marines, we tend to learn everything in threes, so I will talk to you about three little vignettes, and then I will do question and answer, and we can go any direction you want to go. But in looking at these three vignettes, my objective will be to probably depress you, and then we'll see if we can recover. But my job, as it sits today, as the Vice Chairman, is really to worry about the future warfighter. And will they have what they need? Will the generals that we're trying to bring up truly make the transition from years of being told what to think to a transition to how to think? And will we have set the conditions and have a sufficient stable for the unknowns that will face us in the 21st century? And the rate of change that is occurring out there in this information age is phenomenal. It is, in one case, terribly enabling. It has given us great leverage in business, in education. And then you look at the financial crisis that we're going through and the interdependence that has occurred as a result of this ubiquitous ability to exchange and to be interconnected around the world. And so it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. And this world that we live in, taking just kind of a short walk down demographic lane, but today, births per minute in the United States, 40. China, 160. India, 280. Minutes to hours, to days, weeks, years. That's fundamentally going to change who we are and what the world that we live in. You can pick your poison on climate and warming and resources and energy and the competition for all of the above. It is not getting easier, it is getting harder. And as we work our way through that, that competition will inevitably turn to conflict. As I look at this room, another demographic that we watch and worry over a little bit is I call it the testosterone demographic, but it's the 18 to 35-year-old males. And where are they today, and where are they growing? You're basically looking at Asia, you're looking at Africa, you're looking at South America. 18 to 35, follow that demographic and you'll find conflict. And they're growing at a rate that is phenomenal. At the same time, you can go to Europe, and the indigenous population there is going down. There are places in Russia between 95 and 2005 where we saw as high as 65% decline in population. So things are changing. And as they change, they're going to drive competition. The difficult part about this is, at least up until now, certainly we've had a sufficient reservoir of either natural resources, intellectual capacity to adapt, you name it, And so we have stayed on the front side of that curve for the most part as a planet. Okay? But what happens when you put a financial crisis with a climate problem with a weapon of mass destruction? Do you get to the point where you're at a so-called tipping point? Where is that tipping point? How close are we today versus our ability to adapt? Those are very fuzzy lines, and you approach them kind of tiptoeing and trying to figure out, are we there, aren't we? Will we have control of how quickly we approach those lines? I would guarantee you no. Someone else will have a vote. And we won't know the pairing that could come, that could hit that tipping point. And so for me, in my career, we've gone from worrying about the potential of losing a nation state to a war to the so-called Cold War of mutual assured destruction, to a world today where, unfortunately, in these forums, we hear the words species ending. And that's the depressing side of this conversation. But that's the world in which, for me, we are starting to bring up the people that will have to confront those realities and lead in those realities. Point number 2, or vignette number 2, competitive edge. You know, it is said industrial age probably somewhere around the 1760s, the start of the transition from agrarian to an industrial society. Took us about 100 years to move from, and I'm thinking in military terms here, but 100 years to move from musket to repeater rifle. Fast forward 5 years to invent the nuclear weapon. Fast forward, today, my source here, just since it's an academic environment, is YouTube. The likelihood that we will exceed in a processor, computer, the capacity of the human mind easily probably in the 2020 timeframe. People forecast the $1,000 laptop will get there by 2040. I'm not sure those dates are right. What I would tell you is they're likely too far into the future, that we're going to get there faster, not less. 2006, we stored and processed 40 exabytes of unique information. I don't know what an exabyte is, but that's essentially 300,000 Libraries of Congress. As we transition in DoD from kind of a network architecture into the cloud architectures, we're seeing that within a year we'll do that amount in a month on the battlefield, not as a nation, on the battlefield. I mean, just the scale of these activities is significant, and it's going so quickly that my worry on a daily basis is, can you bring up leaders who are relevant and can lead that activity? We challenge and we struggle. Another one of my YouTube statistics, essentially people believe now and talk in terms of, in the third year of your college education, somewhere in the 30 to 40% of what you learned in the first year is irrelevant. It's just OBE by technology. We in the military live in 3-year tours. So as a leader, as a commander, you go in and for 3 years you command. Well, if by the time you get to the end of that tour, whether you're the commander, middle management, or the troop, it's time to go back to school. But we do school 3 times in a 40-year career. That's not going to serve us well as we move forward. Our ability to stay competitive is being stressed. We are already This is something people just don't want to hear, particularly of our age, my age, sorry, can't refer to you, that we're bioenhancing our people. Whether we do it with pills that help them take tests, whether we do it with pills that help them perform physically, or whether we give go-fast pills to pilots to keep them awake. I mean, just move that forward 10 or 20 years, and the bioenhancement of these people is a reality. One that we're not ready to come to grips with yet, but the people that are coming up, it's the world they live in. We're going there. Medicine has done incredible things for the military in the past 10 years, past 5 years. Our biggest problem today on the medical side, we have a 97% survival rate. Unheard of, unheard of. Our biggest problem is I can bring somebody up and have them stand right next to me, looks just like me, but you can't tell. There are limbs missing, there are organs missing, there is trauma. It is the wounded that you cannot see the wound. And how we handle that as a society, and how we handle that as a military, and how we handle that as we move to the future is all of the challenges that are sitting in front of us, things that we hadn't thought of. So if I tell you that in 1900, the best economy, the best education system, the best medical system, best governance, England. 2000, United States. 2025. Competitive edge. You throw that together with the first thing that we talked about in this interaction, and it is, from a business standpoint, very difficult today to break out. We built patent law on a 30-year cycle. You invent something, you should expect to have competitive edge for 30 years. Today, most business schools would tell you 30 months. On the battlefield, we figure 30 days. In improvised explosive devices, it's a 30-day cycle. You build it, we figure out how to defeat it, and we're into the newest generation within 30 days. We match that with our PPBE system of how we resource and develop requirements, which is a 5-year system at the best, and 30 days and that system just don't work together. 30-day cycles and a congressional budget cycle don't work together. And we have huge disconnects here. We're trying to hand jam an information age and a transaction rate into an industrial construct. And it is challenging us. And when you look at an organization, a business, and you say, okay, lean, mean, everybody be nice to each other. You flatten an organization out. You use the information age tools to flatten it out, to get inside the decision cycles, to get the transaction rates up, to be able to adapt to your competition. And the first people you disenfranchise is your middle management, the process owners, because they don't like to change. And so at corporate leadership level, you're trying to figure out how to bring middle management along but flatten your organization out. You're trying to figure out how to grow enough at the lower levels that can be the strategic leaders and still have a lean middle management cadre. How do you do these things? For me, the last 10 years as a general officer, the most challenging task is managing people, managing culture that would like us to stay in one place, but the demands of the external world will not stand for it. How do you do that as a leader? How do you grow the people that are necessary and the skills necessary to operate in those environments? Those are the challenges of business today. Those are the challenges of strategic leadership today. Again, it's that transition from a life of being told how to think or what to think to a life of how to think. And it's very difficult. And we had this conversation at the table as we were sitting down. In business, we tend to say, gee, wouldn't it be nice if If we found Cartwright at age 16 and decided he's going to be president or a general or the CEO, and we're going to grow him up that way. The problem is you don't know what the environment's going to be when he grows up. So what are you going to educate him for or her? And that's the struggle we have inside the military, the transition from a subject matter expert to a generalist. And how many of them can you get, and how big a stable can you have so that you feel that you've protected the nation no matter what the crystal ball forecasts. The last piece here is the people side of this thing, and how fast we can bring them up and the challenges that we will face and our people will face as we move forward. When I talk to new generals, we have a class that we call the Capstone Class, but it is the idea of we take them, we break them away from their duties because you can never get them away from their desk. They're always convinced that the world will collapse if you take them away from their desk. So their first realization is nobody even notices. And we send them off to a 6-week school to give them a sense of the world around them. This was a part of Goldwater Nichols, started in the early 80s. It is a good activity. It was started because we were all convinced, depending on what uniform you wore, that everybody else had an eye in the middle of their head and they were weird and couldn't be worked with. And you've now got to bring them together and convince them that people are actually pretty smart and there are good ideas out there and good things that you can learn. That part of Goldwater Nichols has gone, really to the wayside now. Much of the cadre that is coming into the General Officer Corps has grown up joint, has grown up deployed around the world. So they see a very global perspective rather than the very narrow perspective of their service. But they bring their service values and ethos and experience with them, and that's where you get the great value in a generalist. But as we talk to them, as I talk to them, the things that I try to help them understand, what is going to keep you relevant? For them, they're supposed to be a mile wide and an inch deep. They've got to know everything just a little bit and then reach into the stable and know it just in time. Typical CEO-like attributes. Two things, from my perspective and my experience, that will break them out of the pack. The first one is that as soon as they can possibly realize and understand that education is going to be a defining activity and is something they're going to have to do continually, the minute they stop, the first person that knows is the people they lead because they cease to be relevant, and the last person that knows is them. You watch our general officers, the minute they stop going to school, the minute they believe their experience is sufficient to get them through, is the minute that they become irrelevant and are separated from the pack. Okay? The second thing is their health. They generally are all type A's, and so they're trying to go learn how to sleep faster in order to put more hours in. And they drive, and so the second thing is their health, because they are getting to that age, and none of them want to admit it, where that's a driver. So between education and their health, that's what keeps them vibrant. But the reality is that the difference between the entry-level private and the experience of the general is so great that keeping them able to communicate together, for us to give basic direction that they can follow, and to be relevant and speak in terms that they will understand and believe and are willing to go into significant harm's way over, is a huge gulf. And the minute you become irrelevant, you are no longer connected as a leader, and they are not going to follow you. The uplifting part of this conversation, and I'll draw it to an end here, these 18 to 21-year-olds that are out there and are the bulk of our force, that are your children, our children, out there doing high-risk activities all over the world. They don't think like us. They don't have national boundaries in their mind. They live in an IT world. They came up in an IT world, and there is no relevance to the geographic where and how. They are global in their mindset. As soon as you get them out and amongst cultures, they assimilate it very quickly. It's pretty incredible to think, and I'll use an aircraft carrier as an example, 5,000 people, steaming around in the ocean, mean age 20.3, more combat power, destructive power than any one of us would ever normally experienced in our life. Think about something that big, nuclear powered, average age 20 of the people running it, 20 years, 0.3. You go out into the provincial reconstruction teams. These are the teams that are out helping people help themselves in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, places like that. Average age somewhere around 19 to 20, teaching local communities how to govern, teaching them how to develop business. We can't get them to come home. They are so satisfied and self-fulfilled with that kind of work. There was a comment here earlier about the financial crisis and the likelihood that for the government and Department of Defense that resources will start to come down, and what's that going to do to our recruiting? It's an inverse relationship. We're already getting lines at the door. People talk about the statistic of 50% of high school graduates out there now. 50% is what we're graduating. My service right now hanging right around 97.8% high school graduate. Army is probably at the low end with 94% high school graduates. It actually goes against the grain. When times get tough, the lines start to form. We can raise our standards and keep them high, and that benefits the nation. But these young people that, for the most part, are, let's say, as old as 24 or 25, 3 combat tours in at least 2 different countries, global experiences far beyond what most people would have gotten in their life, it's certainly for me. Will stay in the military to some extent, but the bulk of them will go out and be your teachers, your mayors, your police, your fire department, your business people. They will come with a global perspective. They are sponges, and they can do incredible things for you. And so my glass half full approach to life is that's our heritage. That's what's going to keep us at the cutting edge. They will keep us competitive, even if we try to do otherwise. And so that's the good news here. The generation we're bringing up is really awesome. Our challenge is keeping up and making sure we don't screw it up for them. And I'll quit on that note. Thank you.